I posted my grandmother's secret recipe at 1:03 p.m. By 1:36 p.m., my best friend had stolen it, claimed it was hers, and told me I should be flattered. She had no idea what storm she just unleashed. The notification sound on my phone should have been a warning bell. Instead, it became the soundtrack to the most devastating betrayal I would ever experience. But it also became the catalyst for the most satisfying revenge story you will ever hear. My name echoes through kitchens now. My cookbook sits on bestseller lists. And the woman who stole from me? She chokes on bitterness every time she sees my success. This is that story. The afternoon sun streamed through my kitchen window as I photographed the golden brown crumble that had taken me months to perfect. Every grain of sugar, every pinch of cinnamon, every carefully measured ounce of bourbon had been tested and retested until it sang with the same warmth I remembered from my grandmother's kitchen. This was not just any recipe. This was heritage. This was love baked into a dish that had graced our family table for 3 generations. My grandmother had whispered the secrets to me on her deathbed, her weathered hands guiding mine as we made it together one last time. The peach bourbon crumble represented everything I had poured into my food blog over the past 2 years. Every late night spent writing, every dollar spent on ingredients, every moment of self-doubt pushed aside in pursuit of sharing something meaningful with the world. I had documented every step of my journey to recreate it. The failed attempts where the crumble turned soggy. The breakthrough moment when I discovered that a dash of sea salt elevated the sweetness. The revelation that swirling cinnamon through the bourbon created depth that made people close their eyes and sigh. 3 months of testing. Dozens of variations. Hundreds of dollars in ingredients. All leading to this moment when I would finally share my grandmother's legacy with my growing community of food lovers. I typed the caption with trembling fingers, knowing that I was about to honor the woman who had taught me that cooking was not just about feeding bodies, but about nourishing souls. At exactly 1:03 p.m. I hit publish. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in from followers who had been waiting for this recipe. Hearts and fire emojis filled my screen. People shared their own stories of grandmothers and family recipes. The engagement was everything I had hoped for and more. I was still basking in the warmth of the response when my phone buzzed again at 1:36 p.m. Another notification. Another comment, I assumed. Another person connecting with the story I had shared. But this notification was different. This one made my blood run cold. It was from Hannah. Hannah Larson, my college roommate turned food blogger friend. The woman I had supported through her own blogging journey. The person I had shared late-night conversations with about our dreams of making it in the food industry. But this was not a comment on my post. This was a notification that she had tagged me in her own post. I clicked through to her page, and my world shattered. There it was. My grandmother's peach bourbon crumble. The exact same golden brown perfection I had just shared. The same styling. The same angle. Even the same vintage plate I had used for the photograph. But the caption made me physically ill. Been working on this all week. Sometimes the best recipes come from pure inspiration and lots of kitchen experiments. This peach bourbon crumble is about to become your new obsession. Trust me on this one. No credit. No mention of my name. No acknowledgement that 33 minutes earlier, I had shared this exact recipe with the world. Just Hannah, basking in praise for my grandmother's legacy as if it were her own creation. The comments on her post were growing by the minute. People were calling her a genius. Food bloggers with massive followings were asking for the recipe. Brands were sliding into her comments, interested in collaborations. And there I sat, watching my life's work being celebrated under someone else's name. My hands shook as I opened our private message thread. We had been friends for 6 years. Roommates who had survived college together. Women who had supported each other through breakups and career changes and family crises. If there was an explanation, if there was some misunderstanding, she would give it to me. Hey, I typed, my fingers hesitating over each letter. I saw your post. That's my grandmother's recipe. The one I just shared an hour ago. The typing indicator appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Oh my gosh, I had no idea you posted something similar. Great minds think alike, right? I have been working on this recipe for weeks. It must be one of those cosmic coincidences where we both had the same inspiration at the same time. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was reading. Similar? The recipes were identical down to the measurement of bourbon. The techniques were exactly what I had spent months perfecting. Even the sea salt and cinnamon swirl that I had considered my signature touches were there. Hannah, this is my grandmother's recipe. You know this. I have been talking about recreating it for months. You even commented on my test photos last week. Another pause. Another dancing typing indicator. I understand you might be upset, but I did not steal anything. Recipes cannot be copyrighted, you know. If anything, you should be flattered that we both came up with something so similar. My post is already going viral. This is good for both of us. Flattered. I should be flattered that my best friend had stolen my grandmother's legacy and claimed it as her own. I should be grateful that she was profiting from my months of work and my family's heritage. I should be honored that she had decided my recipe was good enough to steal. The audacity of her response hit me like a physical blow. Not only had she stolen from me, but she was now gaslighting me into believing that I should be grateful for the theft. I looked at her post again. The likes were climbing past 5,000. Food Network had commented. A cookbook editor had slid into her comments asking about representation. Everything I had dreamed of was happening for her, built on the foundation of my stolen work. But something deeper was happening inside me. Something that went beyond anger or hurt or betrayal. Something that felt like the rumble of thunder before a storm. If Hannah wanted to play games with my recipes, I would give her a game she would never forget. I did not respond to her message. I did not call her out publicly. I did not start a social media war that would make us both look petty and unprofessional. Instead, I disappeared. To my followers, I posted a simple message. Taking a short break to work on something special. See you soon, beautiful humans. To my family, I said I needed time to focus on a project. To Hannah, I said nothing at all. But I was not taking a break. I was declaring war. The next 3 months became the most intense period of my life. I transformed my kitchen into a laboratory and my dining room into a photography studio. I pulled out every recipe card my grandmother had ever written, every torn piece of paper with her handwriting, every memory of standing beside her as she cooked. But I did not just recreate her recipes. I elevated them. I researched the history behind each dish. I tested modern techniques that would enhance the traditional flavors. I wrote stories that connected each recipe to the moments that had shaped my family. The apple cinnamon bread became a meditation on Sunday mornings, and the way love could be kneaded into dough. The beef stew recipe told the story of my grandfather's return from war, and how my grandmother had fed him back to health with slow-cooked comfort. Every recipe became a chapter. Every chapter became a piece of my heart laid bare on the page. I worked 18-hour days. I photographed every dish in natural light, no filters, no artificial enhancements. Just honest food captured in honest moments. I wrote until my fingers ached and my eyes burned. I tested and retested until each recipe was perfect. Meanwhile, Hannah's success with my stolen recipe had launched her into food blogging stardom. Brands were sponsoring her posts. She had been featured in magazines. She was being called an up-and-coming talent in the culinary world. And with each of her victories, my determination grew stronger. I was not just creating a cookbook. I was creating a legacy that would outlast her 15 minutes of fame. I was building something that would make her theft look like the pathetic act of desperation it was. The title came to me on a Tuesday afternoon, as I was writing the story behind my grandmother's chocolate chip cookie recipe. The cookies that had been my comfort food through childhood heartbreaks and teenage angst. The recipe that Hannah had once begged me to share with her. From crumbs to crown. Recipes they'll try to steal. It was perfect. It was honest. It was a promise and a threat wrapped in beautiful typography. I reached out to a publisher I had been following for years. A small but prestigious house that specialized in food memoirs. I sent them my proposal along with 3 sample chapters and a dozen photographs. They responded within 48 hours. They wanted the full manuscript. 2 weeks later, they wanted to publish it. For weeks after that, I was signing a contract that would change my life forever. The book launched on a Tuesday morning in October. I had prepared for modest success. Maybe a few hundred copies sold. Maybe some nice reviews from food bloggers who appreciated the storytelling approach. I had not prepared for what actually happened. By noon, the book had cracked the top 100 on Amazon. By evening, it was in the top 50. By midnight, it was climbing toward the top 10. But the real moment came the next morning when my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was my editor, and she was practically screaming with excitement. BuzzFeed wants to feature you. Good Morning America is calling. Food Network is interested in a show. You are #1 in cooking and memoir. Number 1. My grandmother's recipes, my stories, my months of heartbreak and determination had created something that resonated with people across the country. The book was not just selling, it was creating a movement. Reviews poured in from readers who connected with the stories. Food bloggers praised the authenticity of the recipes. Professional chefs complimented the techniques I had developed. But the review that mattered most came a week later. It was a 1-star review from a user named Honest Baker 1991. The review was short and bitter. Overhyped. Basic flavors. Not original. Anyone could have written this. I clicked on the profile, my heart racing even though I already knew what I would find. h.larson91@gmail.com. Hannah. She had created a fake account to leave a negative review on my book. The woman who had stolen my recipe and told me to be flattered was now trying to sabotage my success with anonymous hatred. But her review was lost in an ocean of 5-star ratings. For every bitter word she wrote, 1,000 readers praised the book. For every attempt to diminish my achievement, 10 more people discovered my grandmother's legacy. Her theft had backfired spectacularly. The book continued to climb. Second printing. Third printing. Translation deals. International distribution. Everything I had ever dreamed of was happening. Built on the foundation of the recipes she had tried to steal. Meanwhile, Hannah's career had stagnated. The initial burst of attention from my stolen recipe had faded. Her subsequent posts received less engagement. The brands that had once courted her moved on to the next trendy blogger. She had stolen my recipe expecting to build an empire. Instead, she had given me the motivation to build one myself. The interviews came next. Food Network. The Today Show. NPR. Every interviewer asked about the title, about the story behind the book, about the inspiration for the subtitle. Recipes they'll try to steal, I would say with a smile, is about the unfortunate reality that in our social media world, people sometimes claim others' work as their own. But it's also about the power of authentic storytelling and the importance of honoring the people who came before us. I never mentioned Hannah by name. I never had to. The story spoke for itself. 6 months after the book's release, I was at a food festival in Austin, signing copies and talking to readers. A young woman approached my table, holding a well-worn copy of my book. "I have to tell you," she said. "I originally found your grandmother's peach bourbon crumble recipe on someone else's blog. But when I made it, something felt off. The story did not match the recipe. It felt hollow. Then I found your book and realized I had been following someone who had stolen from you." She paused, looking embarrassed. I wanted to apologize for supporting her, even unknowingly. "Your book taught me about the importance of crediting sources and honoring the people behind the recipes." This conversation happened dozens of times over the following months. People who had initially discovered my recipes through Hannah's theft were finding their way to the source. They were buying my book, following my blog, and most importantly, learning about the stories behind the food. Hannah's moment of viral fame had become a pathway to my legitimate success. The ultimate validation came a year later when I received an email from a literary agent in New York. A major publisher wanted to discuss a multi-book deal. They were interested in my unique approach to food writing and wanted to develop a series of cookbooks that combined recipes with storytelling. The advance they offered was more money than I had ever imagined making from writing. As I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I had first photographed my grandmother's crumble, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. How a moment of betrayal had become the catalyst for achieving dreams I had barely dared to voice. My phone buzzed with a notification. Another message from Hannah. Hey, I saw your book deal announcement. Congratulations. I always knew you had it in you. I stared at the message for a long moment, remembering the woman who had once been my friend, the person who had shared late-night conversations about our dreams and fears, the roommate who had celebrated my small victories and comforted me through defeats. But I also remembered the woman who had stolen my grandmother's legacy and told me to be flattered, the person who had tried to build her career on my foundation and then anonymously attacked my success when her theft backfired. I did not respond to her message. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I opened my laptop and began working on my next book. The publisher wanted a collection of holiday recipes with stories about tradition and family. I had dozens of my grandmother's recipes that had never been shared, stories that had never been told. As I typed, I thought about the subtitle of my first book, Recipes They'll Try to Steal. It had been born from pain and betrayal, but it had become something larger. A reminder that authenticity cannot be stolen, that genuine stories resonate in ways that theft never can. The book had become my crown, built not from someone else's crumbs, but from my own foundation of love, loss, and determination. And every time Hannah scrolled through bestseller lists, every time she saw my name and my face, every time she read the words, written by the original, she would remember the recipe she had stolen and the empire I had built in response. The notification sound on my phone had once been the soundtrack to betrayal. Now it was the sound of success, of readers connecting with my stories, of dreams becoming reality. I had learned that theft is temporary, but authenticity is eternal. That stolen recipes might go viral, but genuine stories build lasting connections. That the best revenge is not bitterness, but excellence. My grandmother's peach bourbon crumble had become more than a recipe. It had become the first chapter in a story of resilience and triumph. And while Hannah had stolen one recipe, she had unknowingly given me the motivation to share hundreds more. The irony was perfect. She had wanted to steal my success, but instead, she had become the unwitting architect of my greatest achievement. As I finished the opening chapter of my second book, I raised a glass of bourbon, the same brand I used in my grandmother's crumble, and whispered a toast to the woman who had tried to steal my recipe and ended up giving me a bestseller instead. Bon appetit, darling, I said to the empty kitchen, echoing the words I had written in my first book's dedication. And thank you for reminding me that some recipes are worth fighting for. The sun was setting through my kitchen window, casting the same golden light that had illuminated my grandmother's crumble on that fateful afternoon. But now, instead of photographing someone else's theft, I was creating something entirely my own. Something that no one could ever steal. Something that would outlast viral posts and temporary fame. Something that would make my grandmother proud. The war that had begun with a stolen recipe had ended with a literary empire. And every time I saw my name on a bestseller list, every time I received a message from a reader whose life had been touched by my stories, every time I opened my laptop to begin another chapter, I was reminded that sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything your enemy never could be. Original. Authentic. Unstoppable. The recipe for success, it turns out, cannot be stolen. It can only be earned. If you enjoyed this story of culinary revenge and triumph, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that will leave you speechless. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, and let us know in the comments what you would have done in my situation. Your support means everything to us, and we have so many more amazing stories to share with you. Thank you for being part of our community.